And while Yellen plans to tour China, a prominent Chinese businessman is on a tour of his own. We're talking about Jack Ma, the founder of the Alibaba Group. Guess where he went last week? To Pakistan. Now, Jack Ma makes news wherever he appears, in China, in Japan, in Hong Kong. But Jack Ma in Pakistan is the stuff that headlines are made of. Stranger than usual. He took a quick trip to Lahore. It lasted less than 24 hours, but was long enough to set the rumour mills buzzing. What could this trip mean? Our report explores.
This is Jack Ma, China's one-time blue-eyed billionaire. He founded the Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba in 1999. Since then, he has amassed a fortune worth close to $50 billion. But of late, the Alibaba founder has been out of the public eye. Reports say it's because he let the wrong genie out of the bottle. He criticized the Chinese government. This was a few years ago, and his public appearances have been few and far between ever since. So naturally, whenever he resurfaces, it's big news. And bigger still when he appears in Pakistan. Yes, one of China's greatest entrepreneurs was recently spotted in Lahore. This was last Thursday. He flew down to Lahore in a private jet for a brief visit. Reportedly just 23 hours. And it was a low-profile visit. So low profile that even the Chinese embassy in Pakistan didn't know the details of his trip. He stayed at a private location. He didn't meet any government officials, nor did he speak to the media. So why was Jack Ma in Pakistan? Truth is, no one knows for sure. There's speculation about a business reason for the visit, both because of Jack Ma's legacy of founding successful enterprises and due to the people accompanying the Chinese billionaire. There was a 7-member delegation with Jack Ma. It included 5 Chinese nationals, 1 Danish person, and a US citizen. But again, any business angle is pure speculation. Some reports claim the contrary. They say this was a personal visit. Now, it might be difficult to imagine Jack Ma dropping down to Lahore to have mutton nihari and naan. But that's more likely if you believe this man. Pakistan's former chairman of the Board of Investment, Mohammad Afzal Hassan. He's the one who confirmed the news of the visit with the Pakistani media. But personal trip or not, it has raised expectations. Hassan said that the visit will yield positive outcomes for Pakistan in the days to come. Why did he say that? No reason was given. But he wasn't the only one to peddle hope. There was also Zohib Khan, the chairperson of the Pakistan Software Houses Association. He said, and we're not making this up, that although it was a personal visit, it helped enhance Pakistan's reputation from a tourism standpoint. Yes, some people are taking Jack Ma's trip as a watershed moment for Pakistani tourism. Do you blame them? When a country is collapsing economically, they need some pipe dreams to hold on to. What we can confirm is this. Jack Ma flew to Lahore from Nepal's capital, Kathmandu. Before Kathmandu, he was in the capital of Bangladesh, Dhaka. This was last Tuesday. In Bangladesh, he spent a short while at a hotel before flying out. He had a short stay at a private location. Sounds familiar? So, in the last week, Jack Ma spent a day in Bangladesh, a day in Nepal, and a day in Pakistan. After the 23 hours in Lahore, the Chinese billionaire flew off to Uzbekistan. So, he had an action-packed week. 4 countries in 4 days. That's all we know for sure. Anything beyond this is just speculation/wishful thinking. Let's wait for the dust to settle and details to emerge before getting excited about a Lahori Alibaba.
US Treasury Chief Janet Yellen is heading to China. She'll be in Beijing from the 6th to the 9th of July. What's on the agenda? Mending the fractured US-China ties. And Yellen is not the first American official to attempt this. Last month, it was US Secretary of State Antony Blinken. He was the senior-most American official to visit China in 5 years. That visit was sort of an icebreaker, but it ended in awkward headlines thanks to US President Joe Biden. You may remember this. While Blinken was in China, Biden made a rather blunt statement. He called Xi Jinping a dictator. That statement made it to the headlines. There was talk about US-China ties deteriorating further, or America being confused. Because on one side, Biden was calling Xi a dictator. On the other, his foreign minister was trying to repair ties. Talk about mixed signals. But what explains this split? Why is there a gap between public statements and political moves? Because China and the US need each other. Their economies need each other. It's like being trapped in a bad relationship they can't get out of. Look at this statement by the US Treasury Department. It talked about Yellen's upcoming visit, and I'm quoting from what it said. Yellen is expected to discuss with her counterparts the importance for both countries to responsibly manage our relationship, communicate directly about areas of concern, and work together to address global changes. Responsibly manage our relationship sounds like a polite way of saying, let's dial down the rhetoric. Yellen's trip has two main objectives. One, to stabilize the relationship, meet Chinese officials, talk to American companies doing business in China, and basically do some good old damage control. The expectations are not very high, though. The idea is to avoid more friction. The second objective is debt relief for developing nations. Now, we all know that China is infamous for lending money. It's their favorite form of diplomacy. But what happens when these countries can't repay the debt? That's what Yellen plans to discuss, to use the mounting debt problem to build pressure on China. But it still begs the question, what is Washington's strategy vis-a-vis China? Are they trying to contain China or cooperate with it? Or do a little bit of both, which may be a complete botch-up? On one hand, there's talk of a Cold War, America building alliances to counter China, signing up with partners in the Indo-Pacific, cooperation in the global chip market, every effort to leave Beijing out. There are spying claims, trade disputes, and of course the Taiwan issue. On the other hand, there's the economy. The US and Chinese economies are very interdependent, and decoupling will come with widespread consequences. Do you know what the CIA chief said about this? His name is William Burns. He said a US decoupling from China would be foolish. And if you look at the numbers, you'll know why he says this. Last year, US-China bilateral trade reached a record $690 billion. Total US imports from China were $564 billion. And trade aside, their markets are closely linked. China is the second largest foreign holder of US Treasury securities. It is a record $859 billion. If China starts selling these holdings, it would disrupt the US economy. Similarly, if the US defaults on its debt, China would be in deep trouble. And this makes any sort of decoupling incredibly hard. Both Beijing and Washington, D.C. know this. And so should countries that are putting their eggs in the American basket. This Cold War between the US and China is nothing like the last one. It's very different from what played out between the Soviet Union and the US. There's a lot of money at stake. So America's political rhetoric may be heated, but the economic reality is very different, and it won't change overnight. So Yellen must go and make the most of a bad situation. Our planet is burning. Climate disasters are becoming extreme. Over 3 billion people are at risk of being displaced or worse. Clearly, the climate time bomb is ticking and countries are scrambling to find solutions. So far, they've made little progress, and now America may have come up with a new idea. It wants to block sunlight from reaching the Earth. As bizarre as it sounds, this phenomenon is no longer science fiction. It has made its way to legitimate debate. The question is, can it be effective? Or is it just another extreme artificial tactic to alter our atmosphere? Our next report tells you.
4.5 billion years. That's how old our planet is. Quite a long life, wouldn't you say? One filled with daily battles with the human race, because we have polluted its air and water. Strewn rubbish everywhere, over 2.24 billion tons of it, and corrupted nature. So now the world is heating up. And finally, we see how this affects us. We see how climate change harms us. When our air is too polluted to breathe, when the skies are orange from wildfires, and when billions of us risk displacement. So what do? We come up with ideas to solve the problem we have created. And if we're the US, we want to modify the atmosphere further to fight the changes we created in the first place. sounds both confusing and disappointing at the same time? That's maybe because it is. We're talking about solar radiation modification. In simple terms, it means blocking sunlight. Yes, literally blocking the sun's rays, altering sunlight. This is seen as a potential response to fighting climate change. It sounds like science fiction, like some massive shield created by mad scientists that could protect our planet. But, believe it or not, this could actually become reality, thanks to the US. The White House has released a report. It indicates that the Biden administration wants to study altering sunlight, to research this phenomenon some more because it could potentially cool the planet. And fairly quickly, that too. But soon after this, the US ordered a review, showing certain amount of skepticism, meaning that there will be no quick decisions, for the time being, just research. But even so, this is a big deal. The US may want to undertake solar experimentation in the future. It could toy with the sun, and in the world of science, this is extremely controversial. This is not a new concept, but the reason too much progress hasn't been made here is because it divides scientists. Some say it's the last line of defense. It should only be used if and when nations fail to reduce their greenhouse emissions. You know, the gas emissions that cause global warming. But then there is another school of thought. Some experts have issued serious warnings, saying that it could make the atmosphere dependent on a particular substance. So, if this stops, it could abruptly increase temperatures. The thing is, this concept is like putting an ill-fitted band-aid on the problem. For starters, it does nothing to address current problems, like reducing pollution, or the use of fossil fuels, or ocean acidification. All it does is try to deal with the symptom, which is overheating. And this report talks about a bunch of ways to limit sunlight reaching the Earth, like increasing cloud cover over the oceans or reducing the amount of a certain type of cloud. All of these methods have risks, significant ones. And most of all, each one of them can make things much worse, like alter global weather patterns or disrupt food supplies. And, as mentioned earlier, even lead to abrupt warming. Several experts have warned against this controversial method, though for now it seems like the US is seriously considering it. And if so, the White House should know that it's playing with fire, quite literally.
For our next story, let's talk about flights. They can be stressful. But do you know what could be worse? A fellow passenger yapping away on their phone in the sky, or scrolling through loud Instagram reels sitting right next to you. Earlier, this was not allowed, thanks to the flight mode. It disables a phone's ability to connect to cellular or Wi-Fi networks. And air travelers are required to switch on this mode. But in the European Union, this guideline has met with turbulence. Airline passengers will soon be able to use their phones to full effect. And many aren't happy about this. Our next report tells you why.
Imagine being on a flight. You're soaring through the sky, looking at the clouds below. It's calm and peaceful. Your phone is on flight mode, so the usual barrage of texts or work emails don't disturb you. For a change, you take a break from that digital brick in your hand. And for a few hours, you find freedom in the sky. But if you are on a flight within the European Union, you may have to say goodbye to this experience, because air passengers in the EU will soon be allowed to use mobile phones. They won't have to enable airplane mode. They'll be able to make phone calls and use the internet. And this is all thanks to new rules that are about to take flight. They were outlined by the European Commission last year. It ruled that mobile data would be allowed on board and airlines would provide 5G technology, the high-speed mobile network. The deadline to provide this was the end of last month, so airlines are now ready for the big change. But many passengers aren't happy with it. A survey was held recently. It says that 1 in 5 passengers oppose this change. 21% of the respondents were completely against it. 40% welcomed it but said there should be a limit on the usage. Now, sure, emergencies can come up. People may want to contact their loved ones on a flight or check in. even catch up on urgent work. And for this, internet is useful. But for most people, after the takeoff, it's time to switch off. It's part of the experience of a holiday or just a digital detox before you land and get back to work. And all of this could easily be interrupted by 5G. Fellow passengers may attend calls in the sky or loudly stream a movie or watch TikToks. There could be ruckus on board. But apart from the anticipation, something else is irking the passengers. They are quite confused. Historically, it was understood that mobile data affects flight communications, that it interferes with the control systems, so people switched on airplane mode when on a flight. But apparently, this is not true. In fact, the concerns differ for different countries. Like in the US, 5G frequencies may hamper flight systems, even alter altitude measurements. But this is not a problem in the UK and EU because they have different frequencies for 5G. So here, using the internet will not disrupt the flight systems, and even if there's a risk of interference, it's very small. So countries are jumping on the chance to make the most of this. And enabling 5G may be new, but in-flight internet has been around for nearly 2 decades. You can get full internet access in the skies at a premium. It costs about $5 per flight. Many flights in the US provide in-flight Wi-Fi, and now so do Malaysia and Singapore airlines. More and more airlines are working towards in-flight Wi-Fi, but it still faces challenges. For example, the same level of connectivity mid-air becomes a challenge. So airlines are expanding their horizons, working towards depth of the flight mode. And whether you like it or not, the sky is no longer the limit for in-flight connectivity.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Starting with Ukraine, they've released a new video of a strike on a Russian tank. This happened near the city of Bakhmut. In Mexico, a mayor married a crocodile. You heard that right. A mayor married a crocodile. As bizarre as it may sound, this is apparently a ritual that dates back centuries and is said to bring prosperity. In South Korea, a robot led a performance by the country's national orchestra. And finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1962, France declared the North African country of Algeria to be independent. This happened 2 days after an independence referendum was held. France ruled Algeria for 132 years. We're leaving you with this. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Para.